Shattered skies. Ash drifted through the air like burnt snow, settling over twisted metal and shattered helmets. The battlefield was silent now, save for the low hum of a distant storm rolling in from the red-hued horizon. Captain Jace Rennick trudged across the charred landscape, pulse rifle hanging low in his grasp, eyes scanning for movement. His HUD blinked static. Comms were down again. Not that it mattered. Everyone in his squad was dead. He stepped over the remnants of a downed transport, the Corinthian glyphs on its hull scorched beyond recognition. A faint noise caught his attention, half breath, half moan. He swung his weapon toward the source, boots crunching over glassed sand. And there she was. Slumped against a jagged boulder, her green skin streaked with soot and blood, the alien was still alive. Barely. Her armor shimmered with iridescent scales, organic-looking, like it grew from her body rather than adorned it. Long silver hair spilled around her like liquid metal. Her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. Her leg was a mess, charred, the flesh split open, revealing darkened muscle and a glimmer of bone beneath. Jace hesitated. She was one of them. A Corinthian. A commander by the look of her. High status, probably deadly when upright. He should have ended her. Protocol said all enemy combatants were to be neutralized, especially if wounded and vulnerable. But her eyes opened. Not with panic or hatred, but something else. Recognition. Fear. She spoke. The language was guttural, fluid, like stones sliding through water. His translator couldn't keep up. Jace knelt slowly, lowering his rifle but keeping it within reach. "Hold still," he muttered, tapping a command into his wrist pad. The translator activated, flickering blue. Her voice came again, processed this time. "You shouldn't be here." He blinked. "Neither should you. It's waking." The Earthborn broke the stone. Jace frowned. "What stone?" Her head tilted weakly, eyes glowing faintly as if lit from within. "You shattered the seal. The prison." His gut clenched. "What the hell are you talking about?" Instead of answering, she coughed, greenish blood staining her lips. He glanced at her leg. She wouldn't last long without aid. He reached into his medpack, pulling out a biofoam injector. "This'll hurt," he said, pressing it into the wound. She cried out in a warbling growl, her hand twitching toward a dagger that was no longer at her hip. "I'm not here to kill you," Jace muttered, working quickly. "Not unless you make me." The foam expanded, sealing the wound temporarily. She slumped back, breathing steadier. Then she pointed, not at him, but at the small blackened device clipped to his chest. "They listen through that," she hissed. Jace narrowed his eyes, unclipping the comm. "Who?" "The ones beneath. Karzul." The name sent a shiver through him. Not because he recognized it, but because of how she said it. Like it hurt her throat to speak it. Like it wasn't meant to be spoken at all. Before he could respond, his comm sparked. "Captain Rennick, report. You're off path. Status." But the voice wasn't command. It was wrong. Warped. Hollow. And layered beneath it, something deeper, something ancient, whispering in a language no translator could touch. Jace dropped the comm and stomped it underfoot. The Corinthian exhaled, relieved. "You heard it, didn't you?" He nodded. "What the hell was that?" "The Karzul. Dreaming things. Caged before the moons were born. Your mining drills woke them." Jace's stomach twisted. The Interstellar Alliance had begun extracting minerals from Corinthia's deep crust weeks ago, after claiming victory in the first wave. No one mentioned anything about ancient crypts or sleeping monsters. "Why didn't you tell us?" he snapped. She looked at him, something close to pity in her alien eyes. "We did. You didn't listen. So we fought. Too late. Now the blood feeds them." A low rumble rolled through the earth. Both of them froze. The ground beneath Jace's boots vibrated. Not from tectonic shifts. This was something else. Something alive. "I need to get you out of here," Jace said, standing. He offered her his hand. She looked at it like it was a weapon. "You would help me." "A Corinthian." "I'd help anyone not trying to kill me right now," he replied. "Besides, seems like we've got a bigger problem." After a moment's hesitation, she took his hand. Her grip was strong, warmer than he expected. He helped her up, slinging her arm over his shoulder. "What's your name?" he asked. "Vylara." "All right, Vylara," he said, starting toward the ridge. "Let's go find out what exactly we woke up." Echoes of the deep. The sky darkened as Jace and Vylara moved along the jagged ravine, the sun dimmed by ash clouds and thick smoke curling across the horizon. The planet groaned beneath them, low tremors rippling through the earth like a wounded beast shifting in its sleep. Vylara leaned heavily against him, her breathing shallow but steady. Her blood, thicker and darker than his, left smears across his armor where she clutched him for support. Still, she didn't complain. Her warrior's pride wouldn't allow it. "You said it was a prison," Jace said, breaking the silence. "This thing, the Karzul. What is it?" Vylara's voice was hoarse, her words measured like she feared even speaking its name might summon it. "Not it. The Karzul are many, but one mind. A hive of hunger. Before the stars found their names, our ancestors caged them beneath the crust. We built temples above the seals, sang the runes, fed them silence. And our drills, broke one." She nodded, cracked it open like an egg. "The blood of your war poured in. They drink chaos, Jace. Rage stirs them. They awaken in pain." Jace helped her onto a rock to rest. His hand drifted toward the holstered sidearm at his hip, more from instinct than threat. "And you knew. We all knew. That's why we attacked your base the first day. You weren't invaders. You were tomb robbers." Jace said nothing. He remembered the screams, the confusion, his squad torn apart in minutes by unseen claws and plasma blades. Command told them it was a surprise ambush, that the Corinthians were unprovoked. Maybe they lied. Before he could respond, the ground shifted again, this time with a sharp crack beneath the ridge. Rocks tumbled, and a high-pitched keening sound filled the air, like metal screaming. They ducked low behind a cluster of boulders. A second later, a shape emerged from the canyon below. It wasn't Corinthian. It wasn't human either. It was tall, thin, limbs too long and too many. Black as obsidian, its surface etched with glowing red veins, pulsing like a heartbeat. It moved awkwardly, like it didn't understand gravity, twisting with each step as if tasting the air. Vylara's grip tightened on Jace's arm. "They've breached the crust," she whispered. "That's a harbinger." The creature tilted its head. No eyes. Just the hint of a mouth, too wide, filled with writhing shadows. "Is it looking for us?" Jace asked. "No," she said. "It's looking for them." They watched as the harbinger turned away, heading toward the distant remains of the human forward base. Flames licked the sky from that direction, black smoke curling like fingers. Without another word, Jace turned to move. "Where are you taking me?" Vylara asked. "There's a canyon outpost about 6 clicks east. Buried comms relay. If it's still functional, we can broadcast to high orbit, get someone to listen." "They won't," she said. "Then I'll make them." They moved slowly, Jace supporting most of her weight. The terrain shifted around them. Twisted trees, once beautiful, now oozed black sap. Some of the native creatures, lizard-like and normally harmless, twitched erratically, their skin bubbling as if trying to contain something within. "They're spreading," Jace muttered. "Like a virus. They are worse than disease. They corrupt will, not just flesh. The Karzul consume what you are and wear you like a memory." He shivered, trying not to imagine that. Suddenly, Vylara paused, eyes wide. She knelt, barely able, and pressed a hand to the ground. "They're close," she said. "I didn't hear anything. Not them. The ancient ones. The old paths still whisper. We're near something sacred." Jace looked around. The ridge curved into a sunken hollow ahead, half covered in stone and moss. With effort, they descended into it. Half buried under dust and vegetation was a structure. No, not a building, a door. Metal, but etched with patterns that shimmered like water in moonlight. Vylara pressed her palm against it. The sigils glowed. The door groaned open. They stepped inside a chamber untouched by time. Bioluminescent crystals lined the walls. Carvings in the Corinthian script danced across them like stories etched in light. At the center stood a pedestal. Upon it, a broken stone disc, shattered in 3 uneven pieces. Jace stepped forward. "What is this?" "The pact sigil," Vylara said, reverently. "The lock. This was one of the anchors. My people once bled their life force into it to reinforce the seal. It was our greatest sacrifice. It's broken." Vylara's silence was answer enough. "We can't fix it, can we?" "No," she said, eyes hollow. "But there is another. A shard remains in the final temple, beneath the Valley of Dusk. We sealed it there before our sun dimmed. But I cannot go alone." Jace looked at the cracked sigil, then at the glowing lines around the chamber. His heart thudded hard in his chest. "If we can get to it, can it stop them?" "Maybe," she said. "But one must bind to it." "Bind." She met his eyes. "Become the seal." He took a breath. "We'll figure that out when we get there." But just as they turned to leave, his wrist pad buzzed. A flicker of static, then a voice. "Captain Rennick, we see you. Return to base." "That is an order." But Jace didn't respond. Because beneath the commander's voice, he heard it again. That whisper. The Karzul were listening. And they were learning. The valley stretched before them like a wound in the earth, black stone cliffs bathed in sickly twilight, where even the sun dared not touch. The air crackled with static, filled with the distant wails of things best left unnamed. Jace and Vylara stood at the edge, the temple spires just barely visible through the toxic mist. "Is that it?" Jace asked, shielding his eyes. Vylara nodded, though her face had grown paler by the hour. "The Temple of Final Light. The last shard lies within. But the veil here, it's thin. They'll be close." They had traveled for hours through cursed terrain, past fields of crystallized corpses, across rivers that whispered names in their sleep. Every step closer to the temple, the world grew stranger. Once familiar physics bent subtly. Rocks floated. Shadows flickered in the wrong direction. Time itself seemed to hiccup, looping moments like broken film. Jace checked his rifle, though he doubted bullets would help much anymore. "Tell me again why we can't just destroy the shard." Vylara limped beside him. "Because it is not a weapon. It is a key. If we destroy it, we lose the only way to close the breach." "And you're sure I have to be the one to bind to it?" Her eyes lingered on him. "It must be someone touched by both realms. You stepped inside the chamber, bore the sigil's glow, and survived. That doesn't happen by chance." He tried to scoff but failed. The truth was, ever since that first encounter with the Karzul's harbinger, he hadn't felt quite the same. His dreams were invaded by voices, and more than once he'd caught his reflection moving out of sync. "Great," he muttered. "I win the cosmic lottery." As they descended into the valley, the air grew heavy, thick with ancient dread. The temple doors loomed ahead, carved from obsidian and bone, covered in murals depicting battles between Corinthians and creatures of darkness. In the final image, a warrior stood alone, arms outstretched, a shard embedded in their chest as light exploded outward. Vylara placed her hand upon the gate. "From here, we go in together. But once the shard awakens, only you may carry it forward." The doors groaned open. Inside, the temple pulsed with dim, golden light. Strange runes floated freely in the air, spinning slowly around them. The silence was complete, so deep it pressed into their bones. Jace advanced, footsteps echoing like thunder. At the heart of the temple stood the altar. Upon it, the shard, no bigger than a coin, levitated in a beam of radiant energy, humming softly. It didn't look dangerous. It looked alive. He stepped toward it, drawn by a pull he couldn't resist. But just before he touched it, a scream tore through the air. Vylara spun, eyes wide. "They're here." From the shadows, figures emerged. Twisted, mockeries of men and Corinthians alike, bodies fused with tendrils of obsidian, faces frozen in silent agony. The Karzul had made puppets of the dead. Jace leveled his rifle. "Move." He fired, the temple lit with flashes of muzzle light. Vylara dove behind a column, loosing a plasma bolt from a weapon grown from her armor. One creature exploded, black ichor splattering the floor. Another kept coming, limbs regenerating mid-sprint. "They don't die easy," Jace shouted. "We're not meant to fight them," she yelled back. "Take the shard now." Jace turned back to the altar. The shard pulsed brighter as if sensing the chaos. He reached out, and the world exploded. Images slammed into his mind. The moment the prison cracked open, a sea of writhing limbs beneath the crust, countless civilizations devoured and forgotten. He saw Vylara as a child, touching the shard in her own rite of passage, and he saw himself, eyes glowing, veins alight with gold. The shard burned into his palm. A scream, his, echoed through the temple as the energy surged into him. The floor shook, cracks spidering out in all directions. He dropped to his knees, the pain almost unbearable. Vylara crawled to his side. "You've bonded," she whispered. "The temple knows you now." The Karzul paused. Every one of them, mid-charge, froze. The puppets tilted their heads, curious. Then they spoke. But it wasn't just words. It was thought, pressed directly into Jace's skull. 1,000 minds wearing one voice. "We see you, Shard-bearer. We remember your kind. We forgave your wars. But this is theft." Jace gritted his teeth, standing slowly as the shard embedded itself into his armor, glowing at his chest like a second heart. "You broke through first," he growled. "I'm just closing the door. We do not wish war. Then go back into the hole you came from. We would, if you return what is ours." He took a shaky breath. "Not happening." There was silence, then laughter. Mocking, alien, endless. And then the ground cracked open. A massive limb, clawed and skeletal, reached into the temple, tearing through columns. The avatar of the Karzul rose, towering, part machine, part nightmare, a god that should not be. "Run!" Vylara screamed. But Jace didn't move. The shard at his chest blazed. "I can't." He raised a hand. Light exploded outward, slamming into the behemoth. It shrieked, reeling. The puppets around them collapsed like strings cut. Vylara stared in awe. "You're becoming the seal." "I can feel it," Jace said through clenched teeth. "The shard, it's rewriting me." She reached for him. "There's still a way out. If we can transfer the shard." "No," he said quietly. "This is the way out." Another blast of light erupted from him, and the creature screamed again, retreating into the chasm it had torn. Jace fell to one knee, his body smoking, his skin flickering between human and something else. "We have to finish it," he said. "At the breach." Vylara looked at him, grief and determination warring in her eyes. "Then let us finish it together." And behind them, the temple crumbled, its purpose fulfilled. The breach pulsed like a wound in the world. What was once a lush Corinthian valley had become a chasm of swirling darkness, the land ruptured by forces older than memory. From deep within the fissure, tendrils of smoke and bone clawed skyward, writhing with purpose. The Karzul had awakened in full now, no longer just whispers in the shadows, but a storm of sentience breaking into reality. Jace stood at the cliff's edge, the shard embedded in his chest thrumming with unbearable heat. His skin was marked with glowing veins, golden circuitry tracing patterns across his arms like living tattoos. He wasn't entirely human anymore. Vylara stood behind him, steadying herself with her spear-formed staff. Her legs still bled beneath the bandages, but she said nothing. There was no time left for pain. "The breach is widening," she said, voice tight. "It's feeding on the chaos above. The Karzul aren't just coming, they're arriving." Jace stared down into the abyss. Lightning flickered in unnatural colors. Shapes moved beneath the black mist, huge, inhuman, and wrong. "They want me to finish the seal here," he said. "To bind myself to this place. To become the lock." Vylara's face twisted. "You'll be consumed." "Maybe," Jace admitted. "Or maybe I hold the line long enough for someone else to find a better way." She stepped forward, placing her hand over the shard. Her fingers trembled. "There is another way." He looked at her, hopeful. Her voice was almost a whisper. "2 souls. 1 seal. Split the burden. We both carry it, and survive." Jace blinked. You can do that. I was born to do that. She removed a pendant from around her neck, a crystal embedded with a sliver of her people's last breath. She pressed it against the shard, and for a moment, time stopped. Jace gasped as his mind was pulled through a tunnel of light and memory. He saw Valara's past, the weight of her people's failure to protect the seal, the centuries of silence broken by war, the shame of having to ask help from a species they once called invaders. He felt her pain, and her hope. The shard split within his chest, and a second half embedded into her own. Their eyes locked. Two pieces. Two guardians. But before they could speak, the sky cracked open. The avatar of the Karzul, more massive now, rose from the breach like a mountain lifting itself from the sea. Eyes like stars, thousands of them, opened along its face, its voice echoing across dimensions. You would chain us again? Jace stepped forward, the air warping around him. No. We're not your jailers. We're your end. You are nothing. Flesh. Flickers. Valara joined him, her hand glowing with radiant blue fire. Then let two flickers become a blaze. Together, they raised their hands, and unleashed the shard's full power. The explosion of light was silent. It spread not as flame, but as memory. Every soul lost in the war, every scream from both sides, all of it funneled into a single radiant burst that tore through the Karzul like a blade made of forgiveness. The creature shrieked, dissolving into dust and ash, its essence being pulled back into the seal. But the breach didn't close. Jace's knees buckled. It's not enough. Valara fell beside him. We're too late. The gate's too open. They're anchored. Then a third voice spoke. Then anchor them to me. Jace looked up. A familiar face emerged from the smoke, Commander Talon, his old superior. But something was different. His eyes glowed with silver light. The mark of the shard. Commander! Jace breathed. Talon smiled grimly. I heard the whispers too. Long before you did. I followed them, and I saw what you saw. Jace frowned. You've been compromised. No, Talon said. I've been called. Just like you. But I chose to listen. With sudden violence, Talon reached for the shard in Jace's chest. Valara lunged, but the breach surged. Tendrils knocked her away as Talon's hand found the glowing stone. No! Jace cried, the power pulsing in panic. You were going to waste it, Talon said calmly. You were going to contain the Karzul. But I can wield them. The shard flickered, then twisted. Jace screamed. Valara's cry echoed his. Talon yanked the glowing shard free, and in doing so, shattered the balance. The breach roared open again. From its depths, a tide of darkness surged forth. Talon laughed, power crackling from his fingertips. We were never meant to seal them. We were meant to evolve. To become. But before he could absorb the shard's full energy, Valara, limping and bleeding, rose behind him and plunged her blade through his back. Light poured out of him. No one wields the gods, she whispered, twisting the weapon. Talon fell, the shard tumbling from his hand. Without hesitation, Jace grabbed it again. It burned worse than before, but he no longer hesitated. He stepped to the edge of the breach, held the shard aloft, and let it devour him. The sky turned white. The world screamed. And then, silence. Jace awoke in a field of silver grass beneath unfamiliar stars. He sat up, coughing. The shard was gone. So was the breach. Beside him, Valara stirred, her eyes slowly opening. They were alive. And the world was still. What happened? She asked, her voice hoarse. Jace looked to the horizon, where the valley once lay, now peaceful and unscarred. I think we changed the ending. Valara smiled faintly. Not the end. The beginning. He helped her to her feet, and together they walked, toward a future unwritten, away from the ruins of a war, and into the first dawn in an age of healing.